Torah Resource is made possible through the generous donations of people like you. If you would like to help us continue to produce this kind of material, please consider making a donation at TorahResource.com.
Okay, Mishpatim, we are here for another Torah portion, and our Torah portion this week is called Mishpatim. It is, which means laws for those who don't know. It's Exodus 21:1 through 24:18. I'll give you the other passages, the associating passages as well. We have Jeremiah 34:8 through 22, and 1 Corinthians 6:9 through 11. Okay. This is where it gets fun for me. I really like the law codes found in the Torah, and this is one of the law code sections that we get, right? I'm going to...
Yeah, any one of these you can take and like drill down. It's like an opportunity to exercise like your legal brain. I think that's why God gives these, because they all exemplify a core commandment. Right.
I went on a tangent. Yeah, I went on a tangent the other day because I was trying to figure out, okay, in today, like what's 30 pieces of silver? Now, I'll explain this for those who haven't read the passage yet. But essentially what happens is we have, if a man strikes his, or let's see here, how does it go? If a man has a bull that gores and it gets out and it mauls someone and it kills him, then not only does his bull die, but he dies too. But if he has a bull that gores and it gets out and it kills a slave, then his bull dies and he has to pay 30 pieces of silver, right? 30 silver shekels. And so that was really interesting to me because I was like, man, okay, so we like... It's different. We have a price on life. And of course, this is going to be one of those passages that people have a huge problem with. And, this is what, the Torah was barbaric and this shows why God, one of the things that has been done away with and all this kind of stuff. And of course, American slavery hasn't helped us at all in this idea. But I was trying to figure out, okay, well, first of all, why is a slave's life different than a free man's life? And what does that tell us about God? Number one. But number two, what is 30 pieces of silver? What 30 silver shekels? And what would that be in today's money? Well, if we just went with silver, the silver shekel was about 6.25 ounces. So if you add it all up, you're looking at about $10,500. And my wife was like, well, that's not even as much as a car. And I was like, okay. But a bull or an ox was kind of like a car back then, right? I mean, you got to think about that. So then I figured out what a bull was going for in the first century or in biblical times. And you could buy about 5 bulls for 30 pieces of silver, give or take. 4.8 to be exact. Mm-hmm. And so I found this really interesting because it's like, okay, well, if you take the silver away from it, now you're looking at like, man, a bull was a lot of money, and it was, something that, that was a piece of life back then, right? That's like your Tesla today, right?
It's like your tractor. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I actually don't have. I mean, this might sound horrific to people, but I actually don't have a problem with the idea that a slave's life there was a monetary value put on it. And there's multiple reasons that I think that. I'll give you one of the reasons I think that. Not all, but some slaves were indebted servants, right? They came to become your slave because they've wronged somebody in some way. Now, one of the things that we don't have in the Torah is any kind of a system for prison. If you did something wrong, you didn't go to prison. If you did something wrong, you either gave your life, gave monetary restitution, but if you couldn't give monetary restitution, you became a slave. Now, think of, people in the prison system today. If there was no prison system, the worst of the worst, the rapists, the murderers, they get killed. But other criminals, now they come and they live with you. Like, you have to be able to...
Well, in our Torah portion, a kidnapper who gets caught is to be put to death.
Right.
Like, do we do that?
We should.
No.
But I guess my point is, okay, now you got this, you have somebody who has been caught stealing, and now they're your slave because they can't, grand theft auto, they took your bull. And so now they're living in your house. You have to be able to, it's like the guards in the prison system. You don't just say, well, you can't hit them. That's not fair. That's not kind. Right. And
no,
then
they go free if you knock, if a master knocks out a tooth of a slave. Here's another view on did you finish your point?
Oh, I was just going to say that, my whole point with that is if you're all of a sudden taking away the prison system and putting criminals essentially as in your home, you have to be able to have a discipline, right? You have to have discipline towards the people who are living in your home. And so to be able to, beat a slave without killing them or without knocking an eye or a tooth out doesn't seem inhumane to me. Now it does if you're looking at American slavery, of course, now we're talking about people who shouldn't be slaves.
We don't want to project the atrocities of modern slavery.
Well, you just said it. Kidnapping
Israel.
Kidnapping brings the death penalty, and the American slave trade essentially was kidnapping.
And so Americans weren't the only, there was a whole merchant world of Muslims and even Africans on other Africans of stealing and kidnapping, and the death penalty would apply to all those too.
Yeah.
Now, yes, certainly Europeans also participated in that. But I wanted to zero in on that. So Exodus 21:28. Can we just read that? So it says, when an ox gores a man or woman to death, ox is stoned, flesh shall not be eaten. The owner shall not be liable. And it's like, what? But then that's because it's the first time, because like no one could control it, right? He can't be held responsible, right? But if the ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, that means he's done it, and the owner has been warned, but has not, but didn't keep it in, and it kills a man or woman. So now that's a modification. Verse 28: ox shall be stoned, owner also put to death. Right? That's so an owner. Before we even talk about slaves, if you're an ox owner, this law should put the fear of God into your bones of how you are protecting the lives of people, right? And it says, the owner shall be put to death. If a ransom is imposed on him, then he shall give for the redemption of his life whatever's imposed on him. Meaning, let's say it's your relative that gets killed by this guy's ox, and the law is, you got to be put to death. You could say, you know what? We know you were warned. We don't want you to die, right? You've got a wife, you've got kids. I mean, it's going to, if you're put to death, even though justice is that you would be put to death, we care about your family. We care. You've got little kids. They need a father. We're going to give some sort of value. So we're going to say, you need to give us some sort of financial restitution. And that could be $1. I mean, literally, this is something defined by presumably by the family, in conjunction with some judges. It could just be, just give us something, give us that little piece of land over there. I don't know. It couldn't be land, though, because land will go back in the Jubilee. Some sort of financial restitution. But it could be a lot. But then it says, if it gores a man's son or daughter, he shall be dealt with according to the same rule. If it gores a slave, male or female, the owner shall give their master, and this is that 30 shekels of silver, an ox stoned. What I'm wondering here is this is a protection of asking too little for a slave. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like in other words, 30
the slave's
shekels
worth a lot of money
to that guy is like, what? I have to give you 30 shekels. So if you're back to you're the owner of the ox, all the more, you know that your own life is on the line in certain instances. And if it gores a slave, male or female, it matter. It's going to cost you.
Do you think that there's something else going on here too? In other words, let's just say for a few seconds that I have an ox that gores. I know it gores, but lo and behold, it gets out, and it's in a field over there, in my neighbor's field, and my neighbor's slave sees it, and it's going to ruin the cabbage patch or whatever, right? Well, what's going to happen? The owner is not going to go get the ox. He's not going to go try to wrangle the ox. Who is, though? His slaves. So in other words, there's a job that they're going to have to do. There is a element of risk there anyway, right? The idea that it would gore, it's way more likely to gore a slave because the slaves are the ones who are going to have to try to wrangle that ox back.
This isn't the running of the bulls where they're like trying, people are like, yeah, like this is in agricultural society,
right?
They're doing work, they're handling these animals, and you're right. These servants, this is their job. It's like the cowboy job.
Well, let's ask this. You got to, is it more likely that the person in the crowd of the bull riding competition is going to get gored, or is the clown who's jumping in front of the job that you're doing matters, I think. And I think that shows, I'll say this. I think that there's, we see a little bit of mixing within the rabbinical literature, and I'm not huge on rabbinical literature. However, I think it's really interesting how they kind of meld some of these. You have the goring of the ox, but you also have the idea of Exodus 21:33 and 34, that, if a man opens a pit and then the ox falls in, then there's all these ideas of restitution. However, the rabbis there's a whole tractate, right, on if a man has a pit and he doesn't mark it and somebody falls into it and they hurt themselves, if it's a human that falls in. And this comes very much into our modern time, right? So, I mean, we can think to ourselves, there's a case going on right now in the American courts. A school shooter came in and killed some people, and his dad is the one who bought him the gun. And now the dad is the one who's on trial, right, for murder. And some people might say, well, that's harsh. But at the same time, you haven't, like the gun, we already know that it gores. It's already an ox that gores, right? So you already have to have it locked up. You can't, and if somebody else takes that thing and kills somebody with it, you know that it's an ox that gores. So now, according to the Torah, I would say that, yeah, you're liable. If you have a child in your house, whether or not they seem to be violent or not, if you have something like a weapon that kills, this is the ox that gores. And if somebody takes that and then does something and somebody gets hurt with it, that's on you, right?
And they also know, I think, there were reports from the school about this particular teenager.
We could look into actual case law here, the law as the American law as opposed to the Torah law. But I would say that just from what I've seen on the news in this particular case, I think that absolutely the father should be held liable. But my point is simply this, that it's not just like, I think a lot of people see these laws and they think, oh, well, slavery's barbaric and it's old and we have nothing to do with that. And, I'm not a farmer. I don't think that, an ox, what does this have to do with me? Well, I think that these laws, it's, we talk about the essence of a law. It might, and a lot of the modern Christian commentators like Averbeck or like, there's others who are, Roy Gain, they see these laws and they say, there's something else here. There is a principle behind these laws that come into the modern day, and the church needs to learn from the principle of these laws. I agree. I completely agree with that. I think that we look at the principle of these laws and we say, there's something here. If I might not have an ox, but I might have a gun and it needs to be in a gun safe, or it needs to be secured so that my kid can't find it and hurt somebody with it. And if they do, that's on me. It's not on my kid.
Right, because the principle is protecting life.
Right.
Right. Principle
Justice
is
too,
recognizing that there in the normal business of life, there's risk. You have to deal with dangerous things like a dangerous animal or what have you. And the principle of protecting life, and that there are consequences when someone fails to be vigilant, right? There's a duty to vigilance, a duty to protect life and to have that as like top of mind. Same thing with, here's just another connection to our Torah portion that connects Exodus 20, the 10 words, and Exodus 21 is something Yeshua cited to the Pharisees when they're doing the whole hand washing thing. Oh, they didn't wash their hands. And he's like, Moses said, honor your father and your mother. So that's Exodus 20. And whoever curses his mother and father shall be put to death. That's right. From our chapter, Exodus 21.
Right.
Why did Yeshua cite this? Well, because in the same way that life is to be protected, that's a principle. There's a principle of honoring parents, to the point that it's not just honor. Yeah, honor. And then Exodus 21. And we've talked about this before, about how for laws that we see later can all be kind of seen as teaching what the main 10 words are. And so Yeshua gives us that great example. So he says, yeah, Moses says, honor your father and mother. And then right after that says, whoever curses, like that's like more intensity, right? Whoever curses his father and mother shall be put to death. I think Yeshua is saying, look, we have to understand these together. We have to understand the crucial nature of human relationships, of generational relationships. Is that intergenerational relationships of children who grow up and are stronger and more able and more in tune with the times and have all sorts of opportunities, whereas their parents are getting older. And those desires to go out and grow in the world and all this stuff have to be constrained by this commandment to honor parents, and that this ensures a continuity of family that is God honoring. But the fact that the death penalty is associated with this in the same way that the death penalty is associated with murder, like, so cursing one's father and mother has the same penalty as murder, has the same penalty as kidnapping, and it's all to be put to death. Like this teaches us how serious God is about our behavior, right, and protection of life and protection of the family and multi-generational family. And, Christians might say, the Torah's done away. Would they say that God has changed his values? So sure, yeah, we don't have we're not in a situation where we're going to say, oh, he kidnapped someone, let's hunt that guy down and kill him. They think that that's what, like, the Torah is like vigilante justice. Like, what do you think? Like, you're going to kill somebody now because I cursed my mom and dad?
Get your Batman suit out, right?
No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying, though, that God hasn't changed.
Right.
That's how serious God takes this sinful behavior. Death penalty. Right. Like, if you love God, even if you think that the Torah does not apply to your life, like, and you think, oh, it's ceremonial law and civil law and it's all done away, you would still have to say, okay, well, I must at least admit, God, in God's eyes, kidnapping, rape, God equates those the same as murder, death penalty, and cursing one's parents. Wow. Like, unless, and my suspicion is, I think there's some Christian groups that are going to say, yeah, the God of the New Testament is different than the God of the Old Testament.
Of course.
Like a Marcionite kind of thing. And that's awful.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, there is a ton in this passage. However, I think we're gonna stop it there, and the reason why is because the goal in these little talks that we have is not to teach you all about the Torah portion. That would take a very long time, but rather to simply pull out some key ideas so that you can build on them and so that you can study and go even further. For teachers, hopefully it sparks something in your mind so that you can teach and expand on those teachings. And so that is our hope. And we hope that we've been able to give you some great ideas for this week. And we will see you next week.